Okay, welcome back to our Tuesday night live stream, starting pretty close to 6, if not right at 6. Nah, looks like I was at 6:01, probably close to it. All right, so we're here, and we're going to go over a few things. Probably should have gone over this a little bit earlier, but I kind of go with the flow. I kind of go with what I'm feeling what I'm interested in. So hopefully. What I'm interested in is interesting to other people as well. So here it is. Topic for tonight. Well, one of them. We'll see see how long I take on this, and then we'll see. I had another thing pop up this morning I thought was really interesting, as far as some biblical interpretation goes. So, and it's a hot button issue. This is a pretty hot topic. It always is. Peace in the Middle East. I think, for Christmas, instead of people saying, what do you want for Christmas? World peace. I think you should say, what do you want for Christmas? Peace in the Middle East, right? That would be good. You can see what I think of Trump's peace plan there with what I got going here. But I kind of wanted to go over a little bit. And this is by no means because I'm being hypercritical or anything like that. It just looks like we're just chopping things up into little pieces. So here, let's go to the map here, and you can kind of see what I'm talking about. All of these little areas right here. You see all those numbers there. Those are all cities that'll be under Israeli control, and you can see there's little roadways going into those cities. And I've got some ideas. I got some thoughts on that. I've actually been to Israel, and one of the places that we were at was Sderot. Sderot is right, along the west bank there, and you can see there's a tunnel there. There has to be a tunnel, but Sderot is right there, and it's within bombing range. It's within missile range of a lot of the cities up here in Gaza. And one of the main reasons that it's no longer under Israeli control is its defensibility. This was told to me by a member of the IDF. Well, everybody in Israel is a member of the IDF, but he's an inactive in the IDF, and he does have control over the northern forces. He's in the northern command there, but he's telling us about the issues down here. And I don't want to say his name because I don't want to put him on the spot or anything like that in case I misquote something, which I don't think I will, but just to be safe. Right here, there's two cities, Ashdod and I can't remember the name of the other city, but Ashdod's in there. And there was lots of Israelis, in those cities. And there was one road that went in to Gaza. And the thing is every time Israelis would go into Gaza, and I should say Jewish Israelis, because you could be Israeli, and you can be Arab Israeli. You could be Druish, not Jewish, D-R-U, Druish Israeli. You could be Bedouin and Israeli. But I guess any military vehicle coming down here, Israeli military vehicle, or someone going into those two cities would have to go through a narrow way where they would get shot at, and every time they're shot at, bullet holes, going in and out. So it became like a security nightmare to try and keep those areas, protected. And not to say that they wouldn't have continued to do that, but with that being the case, the reason I'm bringing that up is because if you have these cities in here, right, and you have just roadways going in, if those aren't hardened roadways, you could see a lot of security issues trying to get in and out of those cities. It could be like, hold on to your seats, folks. We're going to Hebron. Hebron is what we call it in English, Hebron. So yeah, you've got all of that going on in there, and so you have all these cities. Looks like there's 15 of them. Oh my goodness, talking about security nightmare. Just from what I experienced being over there in Israel, that to me seemed kind of a hard pill to swallow on how they were going to make that happen. So, and that's kind of the piecemeal thing. These are like industrial areas, which are not currently under any kind of, I hate to say Palestinian control, but Arab control. I mean, who are the peoples in so-called Palestine? They're former Egyptians, former Jordanians, former Arabs from the Arab League, former Lebanese. Because we're going to get into it, there really isn't a Palestinian people, an ethnic group, a nation, a king, a political entity until it starts as a movement in 1967 when the PLO begins, Palestinian Liberation Organization. So in 1967, that's when you start having Palestinians that are known specifically as Arab only, and not from their national origin. And lots of people in Israel know this. This is not something new. Someone wins a national, competition or something like that, and they say they're Palestinian, and they're talking about their Egyptian heritage. I mean, it's like everybody knows. Okay, so I'm not saying anything. In fact, a lot of the people who said would accept the designation Palestinian said that they were also Egyptian. They were also, they were also, you could say, Jordanian, or depending father, mother side, right? They took more than one name, Oh, and on top of that, also Palestinian. Well, it's not a national designation. There is no ancient people of Palestine. There's just doesn't exist. So that be that as it may, if we go down a little bit and look a little bit more at some of these, you can see that's a little bit close up on the Gaza. I kind of talked about that. There's Beersheba, that is one of the places where Abraham was, of course, and then Hebron. If you read in the Old Testament, the Oaks of Mamre, that's Hebron. So that is, up here in what is called Judea. You should know that this area right here, actually, let's go back here. We're going to go down, we're going to go up to Judea. That, my friends, is Judea. Judea, tribe of Judah, Benjamin. Bethlehem is in Judea. Hebron is in Judea. Why is Hebron so popular? What's going on with Hebron? Well, Hebron is a piece of land that the Jews can claim going all the way back to Abraham, because the cave of Machpelah is there. Machpelah means, I believe it means two places. I could be wrong on that. But Machpelah, it is, in fact, the burial place of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Also their wives, minus Rachel, who was on the way to Bethlehem. In fact, I was at Rachel's tomb, what is considered to be Rachel's tomb, and they have high security around that, because that's between Bethlehem and Jerusalem. And Joseph, I believe, is in there as well. So that is ancient burial ground of the fathers of Israel, the patriarchs, the fathers of Israel. So that is in Judea. So that's what is known to the outside world. Unfortunately, it's known as the West Bank, which is actually Judea. And then we're going to go up to Sumeria here in a moment. So you can see Jerusalem right here, right? So this is, this I believe is Bethlehem, But you can see, and here's the thing, a lot of these areas, like Bethlehem, is already a no-go zone for Jews. Jews are not allowed to travel to Bethlehem. City of David, no-go. They can go to Hebron. Hebron is, they weren't always able to go there, though. A lot of Jews do like to go and pray at the tomb of Abraham, and they were barred from going there. There was a synagogue there. It was it was partially destroyed, I think, but the area was intact, and they were not able to go to Abraham's grave and pray there. So if you don't know about about this part of Jewish culture, it's considered a great deed to go and visit the tombs of the patriarchs, to the prophets. It's at the keen righteous ones, and so not to mention the father Abraham, father of the entire nation, the great father, in fact referred to as our father Abraham, or Avraham Avinu. So that's in this area. In fact, a lot of the stories that you're going to read in the Bible are in this area. They're right here. So that seems really kind of hacked up. You can see this little road coming up here, this little piece coming up right here, and this little piece coming in here, and how all that's going. It's very kind of hacked up. So then if we continue to go up, now we're in Sumeria, called the so-called West. Why do we call it the so-called West Bank? Well, it's never been known as the West Bank of the Jordan, right? Who calls it the West Bank? The people on the East Bank, who would say that the West Bank is theirs, calls the West Bank the West Bank. But Judea and Samaria, well, what's the history behind Samaria? Well, the Jews were there. In fact, it was Israel, and Israel was carted off by the Assyrians, but there did remain some people in the land, and they mixed with the population that was there, so they're kind of mixed local Canaanite and Israeli people. When Joshua conquered the land, it was not completely conquered. There's always been people living in the land that were not part of Israel. So as far as tradition goes for Jewish states or things like that, they never eliminated everybody in the land. God commanded them to, and maybe that's why there's some problems going on today. But it never happened. So this is Samaria, and Samaria is also part of Israel. It was part of the northern kingdom, and there's Mount Gerizim there. There's Samaritans there to this day that have a temple there that they worship at. And they worship at Mount Gerizim, and that's just what's up there. But you can see we have these bridges, right, coming over these areas, and some of these are so-called settlement areas. I mean, I don't really consider them settlements because they're just people buying land in their own country and building things, So, it's settlements because they're Jews and not Arabs. Right? They want to maintain a separation here. So you can see some bridges going over into Jordan here. But how did we get here to this whole thing? How did we get to this peace plan where you're kind of dividing up the land like this? And I mean, as far as President Trump goes and the United States and what we're trying to do, we're trying to come up. I mean, I like the fact that we're trying to come up with something that's going to work for everybody. However, what is kind of disconcerting to me is, why this doesn't look like it's gonna help anyone. Of course, I think the Jews will agree to something like this. The Jews agreeing to two-state solutions has not ever been a problem. I think they've agreed to just about every plan the world has come up with. And so I think we owe them, as the world, I think we owe them a good plan. I mean, we owe them a good plan, the Jewish nation. And of course, we have to be fair to the Arabs and the Palestinian, so-called Palestinian population in the land. And it's just time for some truth about where people came from and what's going on. And I think it's going to take a lot of cooperation on all angles. I thought this was interesting. When I was in Israel, I was part of a pastor's group that went over there. And one of the most impactful things, I really appreciated the tour that I went on. I'm just going to say what it was. It was Christians United for Israel. It was the tour that they send pastors on if you've never been to Israel. I'd never been to Israel. And they made it very affordable for me. And not only that, they provided excellent tour guides. We didn't get secondhand information on anything. The people we spoke to were people who were in the know. We talked to the man who built the walls. We talked to the man who built, I still have some of this video. Maybe I'll break it out and I can, kind of go over some of that. Very interesting. You should see, and maybe you will see, you should see some of the stuff that you've heard. And so, Danny Terza, I believe it's Terza. I'll get it when I look at my video again. He's explaining, what the security barrier is and why it's there, and he actually built it, right? It's not a wall; it's a security perimeter so that bombers don't come in and suicide bombers don't come in and kill everybody. I mean, that's why it's there. And the one that was really impactful was a man who worked as a journalist. And as a journalist, he was in the room when Yasser Arafat came back from Camp David and didn't sign the peace agreement back then. Way back, what was that? Was that Reagan or was that Clinton? Anyway. It was to make and it would have been more land than this. It would have been more land than this if they'd have been able to agree with it. I think Israel gave them something like 93% of what they were asking for, but they had certain conditions that but they gave up most of everything, agreed to it, and said, "Hey, we'll do this, and we'll live with this two-state solution." And Yasser Arafat didn't sign. Well, he came back and in the room. He said, and I realize this is third or fourth hand information by the time you're hearing it from me, but I heard it from someone who was in the room. He said, look, even if I agreed, he said, once we sign this, the war is over. There's no more. Israel is a state, right? The whole reason this is going on is because the other side will not accept an Israeli state in the Middle East. See, they're still saying, no, Israel does not get to be a sovereign state, right? So if you believe that Israel should have a sovereign state, right, of any part, I don't care if it's just a sliver along the Mediterranean, if you believe that Israel should have some part of that land there in the Middle East, then you are at odds with the rest of the Muslim world as far as that goes. It's not really monolithic. There may be some Muslims that are willing to let Israel have a portion, but all the ones who are decision makers and willing and able to make it happen don't seem to be on board with that. Because Yasser Arafat says, even if I sign this and I agree, I can't. The war's not over. I mean, I could say that I'm done, but the rest of them aren't done, right? So it's got to. You're not just dealing with the Palestinian Authority when we're talking about this. Of course, you can talk with the Palestinian Authority, but you can. But they don't necessarily have sway over other Arab leaders, because the reason that we have this whole situation here is because after after Israel was declared a nation, the Arab armies came in, right, and said, no, we're not having a state of Israel of any sort, of any kind. We'll push them into the sea, and that'll be it for them. And for a bunch of Jews coming back from concentration camps in World War II, that was a non-starter. They're going to live. They're going to have some land, and so then that's where we're at. As far as that goes. But this is not the first time that a two-state solution has been proposed. And I don't know, I guess you call insanity doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. So, I mean, if a two-state solution is the plan, why not just go with an original idea. Not saying original as in new, but original as in an idea that was put on the table before, right? So, I mean, I like that they're trying to work it out. I mean, no matter what agreement has come to, I mean, the world's going to live with it. But getting an agreement would be good of any sort. But I think that, you know, I just think that we owe the Israeli people a little bit more than taking away the heart of Israel, which is Judea and Sumeria. You know, I don't think that that's problem now, and I don't think that we should and I don't think any Israeli does either, that we should kick all the people out that are there right now. I don't think that's on the agenda. I think the reason that they're pushing people out now, or not wanting certain people to be there, is because either that they're killing other Israelis or that they refuse to acknowledge the state of Israel, right? So if you refuse to acknowledge the state of Israel and you're in what the world would say is the state of Israel, then you're an enemy. It'd be like someone coming to the United States and saying, hey, this is my, we're going to take over this portion of the United States, and now this is our country. You have to give it to us. Give us autonomous control, suspend the Constitution. You know, we don't want to be American citizens. We want to be citizens of our own country in the middle of a country. What would the government do? Would they tear down their homes? Yes. Would they push them out? Of course, of course. They would bring the army in. They were going, no, you can't take over our land. It's not going to happen. So now you can kind of see how that's going. But let's kind of look here. This right here is the British mandate for Palestine. This was in 1920 that this was put together. And you can say, well, that's a lot bigger than Israel is now. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because the idea, Lord Balfour, what happened was, just a little backstory here. The Ottoman Empire was in control of this area, you see. The Ottoman Empire. And then what happened was the Ottoman Empire fell to the British Empire. And the British Empire took over, Middle Eastern lands. So, I mean, all of the countries in the Mideast were divided up by British mandate, French mandate. They had different areas of land. The Europeans kind of okay, because they didn't really have borders like they have right now, right? They didn't have nation states like they have right now. They were just people, right? They had kingdoms, right? Kingdoms, and kingdoms' borders were kind of whatever was controlled, and that's the way it's been in the Mideast since ancient times. If you could go in, march in, control an area, it was your area, right? And if somebody else controlled the area, then you lost the area. The borders were not things that were set in stone and the world agreed on for all time's sake. They have been flown. I mean, if you look in the history book, you have the Babylonian Empire, and then you have the Roman Empire, you have the Assyrian Empire, you have all these empires expanding, contracting. The Roman, expanding, contracting based on what? Areas that they can control, right? So that's what we're dealing with. So the British, they control the area right now, and so they partition it out, and they say, let's make. Lord Balfour says, let's make a Jewish state. And so what did they come up with? The Jewish state. The Jewish state, the homeland for Israel, for the Jews, Palestine. This whole area was designated for Jews. Well, the Arabs didn't like that, of course, right? They didn't like that. They said, oh, there's no way. There's no way. And so they came up with what? They came up with the two-state solution. I don't think they called it that. They called it, this is more like we come up with right here. Mandate for Palestine, July 24th, 1922. Right? So now we have Jewish Palestine. Jewish Palestine. So who were Palestinians? There were Jews who were Palestinians, right? Not anymore. I don't know what happened to them. Jewish Palestinians, right? And Arab Palestinians right over here. See that? Arab Palestinians in Transjordan. Why Why is it called the Jordan? Because of the Jordan River. So this is the Trans-Jordan area where you're traveling, through the Jordan area. This is, kind of along, when you come up here and you go over around, that's called along the Euphrates. That's like an ancient trade route, right? Israel's at the crossroads of history right here between the Egyptian Empire and the Northern Empires and, kind of the African side over here and the Asian side over here. So, yeah, you can see French mandate for Syria, Iraq, British mandate under the British mandate. Here's Arabia. Arabia just means mixed. And then, Arabia means mixed. So, and those peoples, those tribes out there are governed by Sikhs, by kingdoms, right? And so right here, they said, look, they get 77%. And what we're going to do is we're going to say no Jews can own lands, put settlements in any of this area right here. The Jews can buy land and be in this area. Israel says, great. I mean, of course, they were told that they were going to get all of that, right? But when the Brits come and say, okay, let's do this two-state solution thing, not what it was called, but I'm just giving you the same concept that's been tried before, right? Originally. The Arab nation. Now notice this. The Arab nation, League of Arab Nations says no. How come Palestinians didn't object at this point in time? Because there were no such thing as a Palestinians. Not as a people group. A Palestinian was an area designation, right? Palestine, just so you know where the word Palestine came from, what happened was during the Roman revolt, the Jews against the Romans, and it was Shimon bar Kokhba. They were so fed up with the Jews at this point, they just had it. They had it. In fact, they said, forget it. You're not even Israel anymore. You're not Judah. You're not Judea, right? You read the Bible, they were in Judea. Well, that's the Roman designation was Judea, right? Or Sumeria. These were designations. They go, you know what? We're gonna name them after your enemies. We're gonna name them after the Philistines. So that's where the word Palestine comes from. Since that was the ancient word used, the Brits used that for the area as well when they came to control the area, right? That's why it's called the British Mandate for Palestine. That's where Jewish Palestine comes from, and Arab Palestine, right? It's taking that same word. That word was not ever used to describe a people group. Word was used to keep a people group out. Oh, they didn't. That's not their land anymore. Let's go rename it. We'll rename it after their enemies, and there you go. So you can see, this is the area of the Transjordan in which the reconstitution of the Jewish national home was to be postponed or withheld. The territory of the Jewish Palestine has been reduced by 77% of the original mandate. So the original mandate, over all of it, 77%. We're reducing it. That's your nation. They said, great. So here's this. Think about this. Between 1948 and 1967, all the disputed area of today was in Arab hands, including Jerusalem. In those 19 years, never was there a demand for a Palestinian state. The Palestinians existed, at this time as a separate people group, right, that were Arabs. How come the Arab League said, no, we don't want to go with it? Why didn't the Palestinians rise up and say, you see what I'm saying? That's because Palestinian did not describe a people group, right? It didn't describe a singular people group. It described inhabitants of that area, right? So, here's another fact. In 1947, the UN suggested a partition plan of the British Mandate. The Jews agreed. The Arab League, not the Palestinians, refused and opened a full assault on the young state of Israel. So that's where we have these lines going through the land. And so I didn't put this up on the screen or anything like that. But here's the deal, the nation, the United States is going to do what the United States is going to do. The Arab nations are going to do what they're going to do. And that's why I say so-called Palestinians. I'm not trying to put a slight on anybody's heritage. I just don't see where a Palestinian people group come from. It's not like It's not like French people. It's not like Swedish people. It's not like Swedes or Irish or, thinking ones that come straight up to the top of my head. It's not like Zulus or something like that, bringing in what people might say is that there's an apartheid thing going on. Absolutely not. There's no apartheid in Israel. I mean, you've got Arab judges, lawmakers, Arab Israeli citizens, right? And that's another thing. You have Arab Israelis. So this is what I would say. Why not? Here, I'm going to go back. Why not go back to this plan? Why not? I know this is probably a non-starter, but why not go back to the original two-state solution? Say, well, and you can even use it as a bargaining chip. Go, well, you don't like this plan? Let's go back. I mean, if you look over time, the deal seems to be getting worse and worse for those who would want to make another state inside of this state right here, another nation state. So you don't like the Trump 2020 plan or the vision for vision for peace? The vision for peace plan. You don't like that plan? Well, let's go back to this plan. I mean, what's the only thing that I would say about this plan is that the Golan Heights is a little bit. See, right here, you'd have people camped around here, and you could just lob missiles over. So, I like this plan, except for there would have to probably be a demilitarized zone around the Golan Heights. International zone, demilitarized zone, just so that people didn't come and it could be neutral zone. Belongs to nobody. It could be that way because with this right here, right now this area right here, right, is where the Golan is right now. It kind of comes out a little bit there, and the reason that it comes out a little bit there is because if people from Syria, could come up that close, there'd be a lot of terrorist groups that could just launch missiles, right, lob them right over Galilee and hit Tiberias and other places along there. So not necessarily good to leave it that way. And anybody within there, all that would have to happen is people that are living there would just say, okay, Israel is a nation state. I keep my home. I keep everything, as long as I agree that Israel is a nation, and I say, hey, the war is over. We're not going to fight anymore. We're not going to do anything anymore. Just give us our full rights as Israeli citizens. I think Israel would go for that. Israel just they would maintain control. Anybody who owned land there would get land there. And any businesses they had, anything else like that, they would just have to stop the hate. Now that's a big thing because a lot of the people in those areas have not been told the truth, the whole truth, partial truths, of course. And Israelis might have been told some partial truths, but you know what? I don't think it's probably a doable plan, but I do think it's a fair plan. And as long as we're not getting anything done anyway, why not just stick to the original, good idea, in my opinion, right? So what do I think about Trump's peace plan? Good if you can get it. To me, I think it's a big hurdle. I don't see it coming together. I see still that you have only one side that's willing to make it happen. The other side is not going to be able to, politically speaking, unless they get more than what's there. They could say, well, we could enter into negotiations. They could do that whole thing. They can come and start talking. The Palestinian Authority, they could come and they could start talking. They could say this or that or the other thing. But in the end, I just don't see it. I don't see any lasting peace plan where there's land traded for peace, right? Because if that happens, I think you just create a base of operations for, the enemy to have even more, the enemies of Israel anyway, to have more of a base of operation within the borders. I mean, Israelis are pretty tough security-wise. Just take a flight over there and you'll find out, you're on a whole other level of security, right? What airline in the world has never had a terrorist at all? Why? Because they know who you are before you even show up at the airport, right? You disclose who you are, why you're going, all of this stuff, and it's pretty tight. It's pretty tight because can you imagine? You can't really afford to have an Israeli plane go down. So yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, I think this is a good plan. Of course, there would be lots of negotiation, lots of reassurances of who would get what. People who left their homes during that other war. If I even think, I might be totally stretching this, and I'm not in any way anybody to put any words in anybody's mouth, but I even think that people, now, here's the other thing. Refugees. How long do we have refugees from a war, right? Do the refugees, do the children of refugees then become refugees? I mean, do the grandchildren of the refugees become refugees? Oh. If there are any refugees left, people that had to leave their homes and possessions during the war and something happened, I mean, wartime losses, I'm sorry. If they had to leave and go out and they were original, right? Israel might even let those people come back. If what? If they agree that Israel is a state. It just boils down to, will Arab nations agree that there can be a nation state of Israel in the Middle East of any size, shape, or form? And I think maybe even any kind of partition plan is kind of premature without getting that agreement. Because if you don't agree that Israel should be a nation, then how are you going to agree where the borders are? As my friend Aviad used to say, that is totally mashug. I don't know. You can't agree on borders if you don't agree on statehood. So, right? That's the whole thing with a Palestinian state, right? How does a Palestinian state come into existence? What are the borders that they're proposing for their state, right? Well, I think if you ask the Palestinians, the borders that they would agree to would be this one right here. I think they'll let Egypt keep that. They'll let Lebanon and Syria keep that. I think Palestine would like to take this border right here. We'll agree to this. And all you Jews can live in an Arab state. Well, here's the thing. You might say, well, why not? Why not? I mean, they can stay there. They can keep their... What you're saying for the Palestinians, why don't we just apply that to the Jews? They can stay. They can keep their land. They can be good. They can be represented in the government, all that good stuff, but it'd be an Arab state. Why not that? Well, because if you look at the rest of the Arab states in the world, the Jewish population in those states has severely declined. It's kind of like both and. They don't want to agree that Israel is a nation, but they don't want them in their nation, so they'll push them into Israel. So there's massive immigration going on into the state of Israel by Jews all over the world, because Israel has promised any Jew who wants to return home, doors are open. So a lot of them are taking, not a lot of them are not taking them up on it, right? There's still plenty of Jews all around the world. I think there's probably as many, or sometimes maybe even a little bit more Jews in New York than there are in Israel. Well, it used to be the case that way. Maybe not anymore, but the biggest single population of Jews outside of Israel is in New York City. So, but they're thinking, you know what? Maybe it's time to go home. Maybe it's time to go to our home, to our ancestral lands. The door's open. For the Jew, a lot of Jews believe that the nation of Israel, the nation state of Israel, is the safest place on the planet for them, even with all the problems, right? And I can attest to that. You know, I traveled in Israel, and I had no fear about anything. In fact, I think it's more. I'd be more scared to walk down the streets of Seattle, which I live close to. And I grew up around Seattle. You know, I would rather walk down the streets of Jerusalem, you know, in the middle of the night than Seattle. Just tell you that right now. Although there's probably some areas that probably wouldn't be good for an American to go to. However, you know, if you picked even, let's pick another one, like Tel Aviv. You know, in Tel Aviv, I'd have zero problems. I think just about anywhere in Tel Aviv you could go, no problem. Jerusalem, you might. There's certain areas, you know, Old City maybe, Muslim Quarter, certain times. Although I was in the Muslim Quarter during the daytime, you know, all the shops are open. Everything's happy, you know, it's all good. So, but there's no reason. I never feared one bit in Israel when I was there. And if I'd been Jewish, it could have been a breath of fresh air for sure. So that's kind of my 2 cents in a brief history on what's going on over there in the Middle East. I mean, I can hardly wait for the time when I might be able to go back. So that'll be good. But with my last 15 minutes or so, there was another issue that kind of came up this morning when I was talking, you know, with my wife, you know, and this might seem a little strange thing to be talking about, but it seems to be a pretty big thing. You know, we homeschool our children, and so we can go into reasons about that another time, but we homeschool our children, and there seems to be a lot of controversy over male circumcision for Christians, right? There's groups that say that no Christian should ever circumcise their child, that it's child abuse, and that it's mutilation and it's amputation, and anybody who does that is just a sinner and an evil person. You know, this is going around, and it's, I don't know. For some reason, and this may seem strange, for some reason these two issues, Israel and male circumcision, they go hand in hand as far as the tactics that are used to talk about it, the rhetoric that goes on, the inflamed rhetoric. It's like, holy mackerel. So my wife was going through some of her posts and stuff like that, and one of these verses came out of a Galatians 5:12, and this person who's against the practice of circumcision for anybody, brought up this verse and based a whole argument upon it. Now, for me, I'm not saying that any Christian needs to be circumcised. I would not be a proponent of saying that Christians were sinners if they didn't circumcise their child. But on the other hand, I don't think it's a sin to circumcise your child. I just don't. To me, I know there's probably some men that are on the anti-circumcision thing, but it seems like the mothers, the women are the ones that are even just very. So in Galatians 5:12, this is the verse that was brought up, and I thought it was a good example to show how translations kind of color what you think about things. And you could go off and make a whole case based on one verse under a certain translation and think that you're golden, when in fact, it's not what you would hoped it would be. It's not the proof that you hoped it would be for your side. So this is the verse in Galatians 5:12. It says, I just wish that those troublemakers who want to mutilate you by circumcision would mutilate themselves. Now, this isn't Paul writing this. It's holy smokes, Paul. Wow. Paul wants them to amputate, right? Well, it says mutilate, right? Here. Now, with this verse, you can say, oh, those troublemakers who want to mutilate you by circumcision will mutilate themselves. Oh, my goodness. And this is... Circumcision is not mutilation, okay? It's not. In the fact that technically you could say, well, if circumcision is mutilation, then clipping my fingernails is mutilation, right? So, anyway, it was brought up that, you know what, this is the New Living Translation. And while readable, understandable, which is something else is kind of crazy, understandable. The English is understandable, and when you read this verse, you go, oh, wow, yeah, I get what that's saying. And everybody can. But the thing is that what it's saying? Is that what Scripture really says right there? Did they make it a little too easy to understand? Because here's the thing. Every translation is a commentary on the text, right? Because the text was not written in English, you have to use interpretation to get to the actual meaning. So this question came up and said, well, I don't know if you can use that verse. I mean, I don't think the word means what you think it means. I don't know if you can use that verse to make your point. Simple enough, right? But it's someone, if you've got an agenda and you're all in on it and you're very passionate about it and you see a verse like this, you go like, oh my goodness, it's right there in the Bible. Why can't all you guys see it? I mean, come on, it's right there. So one question, this is the response. Who says the NLT is not a version I should go to? Because I've never heard a person say that when they disagreed with a verse. Well, you're using the wrong version. Well, I've heard that a lot. If I use a version, well, is that what the text really says? Let's take a look at it, right? So a text that I use a lot, and that's what this one is the ESV. Says this: I wish those who would unsettle you would emasculate themselves. Oh, well, that's way different, right? Why is that so different? I don't have a lot of time to explain this. Just so you know, I counted these up. There's 16 words here. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 words there. In the original Greek, there are 6 words. Now this one right here, right? There's a few words that are put in just to make the sentence make sense in English, you know. If it's too wooden and literal, it sounds like broken English, you know. So you have to do some interpretation. The idea behind translation for seeing what the text is originally saying is to do the least amount of fiddling with the text. The more you fiddle with it, the more you put your own ideas into it, and the further away you could be going from the original context if you're not careful. And I think this is a really good example of how the translators of the New Living Translation maybe could have been a little bit more careful, because they're making some big jumps that they think are correct, are solid biblical interpretation, but what might not be. And so when you're not too sure, right? Because, and I'll just tell you this straight up, who want to mutilate you by circumcision. Did Paul consider circumcision to be mutilation? No. What do you mean no? It says it right there. I mean, who says that I can't use this as a Bible? the translation. No, because he circumcises Timothy. Why would he mutilate Timothy? Why? And maybe mutilate, if it is mutilate in a technical sense, it's not a negative thing, right? It's not negative, right? Because he does it as saying, Timothy, you are a Jew. You are fully accepted, even though, some of these guys may call you a half-breed. You're a full Jew, and we're going to circumcise you. And so that there's no trouble amongst the Jews because of your uncircumcision. I mean, that was a grace given by Paul to Timothy, right? So who else was circumcised? Paul was circumcised. He says he was circumcised. And you know the Christmas story. Jesus, born in Bethlehem. The wise men come to see him. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh. The shepherd and the angels. And circumcision 8 days later, right? That's not part of your Christmas story? Well, it's right there in the text. Jesus was circumcised. Do you think God would mutilate his own son if that was something negative? Do you think the Jews mutilate their children? No, they don't mutilate them, right? And I know there's a controversy about how far is too far. Look, it's, as one who's experienced it, it's not a problem. I've experienced zero problems, So, yeah, there you go. So let's look at that real quick. So what's really going on here? If you go, and here's what I think I want to do. Let me try this. I'm going to try and bring something up here, which is what I'm going to do here. I like some of the more literal translations, right? Because it says right here, would unsettle who emasculate themselves, right? Actually, this word in Greek comes before. So let me go there. Blue. I use Blue Letter Bible. I love Blue Letter Bible. It's my go-to online Bible. I also use Logos. I know they pronounce it Logos, now Faith Life, but I use Logos because I refuse to pronounce a Greek word in a way that it's not pronounced. All right. Galatians 5:12. I'm going to get it drawn up here, and then, and then we're going to do this, and I'm going to stop this right here. All right. And then I'm going to do this. I'm going to, multiple displays. Extend these displays. No, I'm going to duplicate. Duplicate these displays. No, I'll do this extend. That's fine. Because then I'm going to do this. What? There it is. Boom. Then we can kind of go in on this right here. Go up. So this is King James Version. I would they were even cut off, which trouble you. What? What did the New Living Translation say again? Here, let's get some tools up here. New Living. I just wish that those troublemakers who want to mutilate you by circumcision would mutilate themselves. I would that they were even cut off, which trouble you. Now, you can see in the King James is a little bit awkward construction. Why? Why is that? Well, let's go over here to the interlinear. That's because this word right here, ophelon kai, and then this one is a little bit tougher. Apakop santai hoi anastatuntes humas. Sorry. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 words. Right? The key words are this one right here. I would. This is why I look Blue Letter Bible. Look. Boom. I would. They were, and it's also cut off. See those two? Even, right? Present active participle, not a plural masculine. Which trouble? Which trouble you? So you can see they were even cut off, which trouble you. It's following the exact, right? It's following the exact same construction. So in most Bibles in English, right? Let's see here. Most Bibles in English, it's going to flip it. I wish that those who trouble you would even cut themselves off. So you can see where is the interpretational problem here, you see? Now, in the verses beforehand, if you look up here, but he that troubleth you shall bear his judgment, whoever he be. Sorry, here. That means that there was one guy. There was one guy troubling them. You know, he'll bear the penalty. Whoever that might be, I believe he will bear the penalty. That's what Paul's saying. And if I preach circumcision, why do I suffer persecution? Then the offense of the cross is no more. It's ceased. I would that they were even cut off, which trouble you. So he's doing a wordplay here. They're talking about circumcision. I wish they were cut off, which means that their argument would be cut off, not that they would. It's a word play. It's to make an impact, but Paul is not saying that they should. But he's trying to express strong emotion, right? Because why? Because these guys are saying, unless you're circumcised, you're sinning, you're not saved. And I think it's kind of interesting that we've come full circle, that if you circumcise, then you're sinning, and who knows, you might not be saved, you child abuser. Come on. It's the thing in reverse. It's gone so far the other way. It's gone reverse, right? So look, why do I say that? It's very interesting what comes on right after this. They would even cut off which trouble you. But if we look here, right? I would. What's the I would or I wish? Right? I wish. That's what this means right here. I wish. I wish in the New Living Translation is I just wish that. Now, this whole thing, that those troublemakers, where is troublemakers here? And it says before that there's troublemaker. There's a troublemaker. Paul says those who trouble you, as in anyone who might trouble you. But he's only really referring to one person, as the previous verse shows, right? That they were cut off, right? That they were cut off. What does it say in the New Living Translation? Those troublers who want to mutilate you by circumcision. One word. They were cut off. That is a lot. See, can you see how that's interpretation? And that interpretation may not be valid, right? Who want to mutilate you by circumcision would mutilate themselves. No, he didn't say that they would mutilate themselves. He said that they would be cut off, right? So let's look at that. That they would be, that's the they, humas, or English you plural actually, right? Which trouble that they were cut off. Yeah, right there. They were cut off. That's the they. That's the trouble you. Right? There it is again. Aphalan kai. Right there. Aphalan kai. Apakapsontai. Hoi anastatuntes humas. 6 words. This, clear, concise. Even the King James. I would that they were even cut off which trouble you. This, right? Who want to mutilate by circumcision would mutilate themselves. He didn't say that they were going to emasculate themselves. Just said that they would be cut. Well, they would cut themselves off. And the word mutilate does not show up. Let's look at that. Mutilate. Right here. They were cut off. We can look at that. Let's look at that. They were cut off. Oops. Let's go back. Let's see, cut off. Let's see this one. G609. Apocopto. Apocopto. To cut off. Amputate. It says, over here it says to mutilate the privy parts, to cut off, right? But, or it says you would not only circumcise, they would even mutilate or cut off their privy parts, right? That they would cut themselves off from the society of Christians, quit it altogether, right there. It says others incorrectly. That's incorrectly, right? So you can take a look at all that. Outline of biblical usage, cut off, amputate. Which technically would be a mutilation. However, yeah. So here's the thing. What happens with that? I'm a little over, but I'm gonna finish this out. So look at this. I'm going to go back to ESV here. For you are called to freedom, brothers, only do not use your freedom as an opportunity for the flesh, pun intended, but through love, serve one another. This means that we should not be using Bible verses to bash each other over the head. Because it says, but if you bite and devour one another over this issue, watch out that you are not consumed by one another. I mean, you can have your opinions as to what you think about this issue. But what you can't do, is take fellow believers and tell them that they're evil, rotten, dirty sinners because they're doing something that's in the Bible. God did not give circumcision to mutilate anybody. When God made mankind, he made him a certain way. And he says, if you want to show a covenant relationship with me, this is what he said to Abraham, says you will be circumcised in the foreskin of your flesh, right? So Abraham, as a sign, as a covenant between him and God, decided to do that. The human body is fine if it's not circumcised. There's nothing wrong with physically or medically with being uncircumcised. Just as if you were circumcised, there is nothing inherently detrimental outside of God's will or mutilation or anything else. Because otherwise God would not have told Abraham to do that. God would not have told a whole nation to do that. God would not have had his earthly son do that. Paul would not have done that to Timothy, right? If there was any negative thing that was going to result from that. It makes no sense. So if a Christian decided to do it, and it's not really even a religious circumcision, it's a medical procedure as far as Christians go. It's optional. It could be tradition or any other thing. There's nothing inherently evil with it. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. And if you say that there is, you would have to say that God was evil and wrong for instituting it at all, for anybody. It's just, that's the way it is. And so I would take this right here. If you bite and devour one another, watch out that you're not consumed by one another. I mean, that's the more serious thing. It's more serious to harm somebody with your words than to cut them in the flesh. It is. Because flesh wounds healed. If someone tears you down with their words, does that heal? The only way to heal it is to forgive the person. And that's what we need to do. We need to practice forgiveness. So I'm a little bit over. I like to be done by 7. I'm 7:06, so I'm gonna shut her down. Hopefully that was helpful. The reason I did that is to kind of show you a little bit about how to study a little bit, you know. And here's the thing: reading your Bible. That's why you read your Bible. You read it so you know it, you get the entire gist of it, and you don't just take one verse and use it to bash other people over the head with. You take the full context of Scripture and make informed decisions about what you think about it. Absolutely. And as long as we are under the blood of our Lord Jesus Christ, and we're in the kingdom and working at this thing together, we need to be gracious and humble toward each other. That's all there is to it. And I can find lots of verses in the writings of Paul, Peter, James, Jude, the disciples, the entire Old Testament, Leviticus. I can find lots of verses that tell you to love your neighbor or to practice those principles. In fact, everything in the Bible kind of sums that up. So, to love your neighbor as yourself. I'm going to end with that. Hope you have a wonderful evening, the rest of your evening. If you're watching this at any point in time, you know, if you like these live streams, please give us a comment. Things you like, you didn't like. Subscribe, hit those bell notifications so that we can, you know, stay in contact, that you'll get everything that comes out that we put out. You'll get a notification that, hey, there's another one coming. So go ahead and do that if you like that. And I just pray, you know, that God blesses you, that He guards over you, He protects you, He makes His face to shine upon you. That's by beaming at you with a big old smile. And that He lifts up His countenance to you. That means He picks you up and holds you up, and that He grants you peace. Shalom.